Hey book readers, it's monthly rewind time, and I took a 14-hour road trip from Texas to Tennessee this month, and then I had to come 14 hours right back, so I had tons of time to read both on the way and during my vacation. So, today I'm sharing some thoughts about the books I read this past month. I'm chatting about a new folklore favorite, an alt history adventure, some sci-fi, of course, and fantasy novellas. First off, I'm going to talk about my favorite book of the month, and this was When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. This was inspired by Slavic folklore, and the book's main character is Demeter, a monster slayer who's been tasked with a dangerous mission to find the legendary witch Baba Yaga. And to do so, he enlists the help of one of his monster enemies, a girl named Allah, who's carrying a family curse, and Nico, a powerful demon with a mission of his own. And it all takes place in, you definitely didn't guess it, the Chicago underworld, where monsters box each other in rundown factories. The vibe is gritty, urban, and mysterious. So with this cast of demons, banshees, and vampires, it tackles themes of anger, pain, fear, repentance, and being true to yourself. And I gave this quick fantasy novella 5 stars. The character development was efficient and effective. The rules of the world you just instantly can wrap your head around, and it had splashes of high energy action, which of course, all those elements together are things I really enjoy. Another book I read this month was Quantum Radio by A.G. Riddle. I had high hopes for this sci-fi time travel thriller, and it almost lived up to them. So the main character is Tyson, and he's a quantum physicist working with a large hadron collider in Switzerland, and he makes a groundbreaking, theory or discovery, and shares it with his fellow scientists. And he sees that there's a pattern to the residual energy after his quantum experiments. So someone or something is trying to communicate via quantum energy. Suddenly Tyson is being followed and told to run for his life. And meanwhile, he's trying to crack this code, something kind of impossible code. He's going to unravel a multiverse mystery, and he's got to also wrap his head around some serious alt history at the same time. And I gave Quantum Radio 4 stars. This was a literary sandwich, and what I mean by that is there was a great beginning and a great ending with a middle section that just drags a bit due to mostly an information dump. There's way too much of a history lesson shoved into the middle of this book. The characters have to flat out explain a ton of minute World War II details. It was just, no. Overall, the setup of the book is great, but the execution is mediocre. I don't need to know everything about a parallel universe or alternate history. Crumbs will do just fine. I just want a sprinkling of crumbs that I can follow to figure out the story. Next up is Clockwork Boys by T. Kingfisher, and 2024 continues to be the year of T. Kingfisher for me. I just can't get enough of her stuff. This short steampunk fantasy book is almost like a prologue to the next book in the series. It's Misfits on a Mission type of book that gathers a group of flawed characters, starts them off on their quest to stop some magical creatures called Clockwork Boys, or Clocktours, and sets up the next novel. Sometimes that kind of prequel-like feel really bugs me, but not this time. I really enjoyed the way that it was executed. And that's why I gave this book 4 stars. I think it's a little bit because the characters are great. There's an expert forger, a demon-hunting knight, a really shady assassin, and this naive scholar who tags along with them. And they each have unique quirks and shortcomings, and they're constantly sparring with each other through really sharp, witty dialogue. And this is something I love about T. Kingfisher. She does an excellent job writing conversations between people, or even internal conversations in people's heads. And on another note of things I love about T. Kingfisher and appreciate really, is her magic system. So they're never too complicated. they come in moderate doses too. Like, it's not all just thrown at you at one time. They're not too overpowering. And I've already started the next book in this series, so, clearly I like this one a bunch because I'm not typically a series person. I prefer standalones if I can get them, but this one was so good that I'm going to continue reading the next book. One more book I read this month was Walking to Aldebaran by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This was a rapid sci-fi novella that has some Piranesi-like vibes to it. Basically, there's a giant artifact outside of the orbit of Pluto that's a giant maze and leads to other worlds. The main character is Gary Rendell, and he's an astronaut who went with a team to explore this huge artifact. And now he's lost and has been wandering around it for who knows how long, looking to find a way back home. But he's not just walking around minding his own business, nothing's bothering him. All the while, he's had to stay alive by defeating vicious interstellar monsters and trying to understand the strange aliens he runs to in this labyrinth. And I gave this book 4 stars as well. There's a dark humor throughout it that I really, really loved, as Gary seeks to understand where he is and what exactly has happened to him. Like I said, dark humor, it's great. It just kind of lightens the mood a bit, and it just had the perfect tone for this kind of book. Another book I kind of sort of read this month was Servant Mage by Kate Elliott. This was a completely forgettable fantasy novella with dragons, and it crams just way too many characters into just 164 pages. Its magic system is also just a giant complicated mess that you're forced into trying to sort out in just this limited amount of time. It doesn't work. I mean, I gave it 3 stars. And honestly, I probably would have DNF'd it if this one just hadn't been so short. Next up is Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. This historical fiction novella felt a bit like something written by Larry McMurtry or Cormac McCarthy. The novel follows the life of Robert Grenier, a hardworking everyman in the early 1900s. It has, this is the reason that I'm saying it sounds like those other authors, it has this southern rustic, blue-collar vibe. In other words, it's kind of depressing. Over the course of the book, Grenier takes part in near lynchings, he lives through tragic fires, he witnesses fatal accidents, and he becomes a dog person. And I gave Train Dreams 4 stars. I wasn't paying too much attention to this at the time, but it must have been well written because I felt bad for the guy, bad for the main character. He lives like a hermit, and at one point he realizes that he hasn't touched another person or spoken out loud for like a really, really long time. It's pretty sad stuff. And overall, it's a short, unsentimental read that tries to capture the rough existence of many Americans at the dawn of the 20th century, and if that's something you're into, this is a good book to read. Another book I read this month was The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malka Ann Older. Here's a sci-fi murder mystery novella that made me realize yet again, mysteries just aren't my jam. I don't know when that's gonna sink into my head, but I don't want to try and solve a puzzle while I'm reading. I gave this book 3 stars. The setting is Jupiter, where trains connect elevated platforms on which people live. And the basic plot is that a guy goes missing near one of these platforms, but as Masa, the main character detective, looks into his disappearance, it's really not clear if the man was pushed, if he committed suicide, or if there was something else at play. Then there's a rekindled romance story between Masa and her ex, who is working on how people can return to Earth. And the Earth's climate was destroyed some time ago, and so Masa's ex is trying to figure out ecological stuff of okay, how can we get it back to normal. Like I said, 3 stars. The setting is neat and the plot is fine, but again, mysteries just aren't my thing. I probably need to give up on them entirely. Maybe I will. It's just some of these plots sound so intriguing that it's tough for me to just push it to the side. I also read The Annual Migration of Clouds by Premi Mohammed. In the cold wilderness of Canada, sometime after another climatic catastrophe, Reed and her tiny community are scraping by. What makes it even more difficult is that Reed lives with Cad. And Cad is this mysterious, mind-altering fungi that seems to have a mind of its own. But the inciting incident of the book is that there's now a chance of a lifetime for Reed. She's been accepted to some faraway university, if it actually exists, of course. So she has to make a decision. Stay and help her family and community, or abandon them for a dream that may not even be real. 3 stars for this book. It had a really good first half as it set the scene and created the tension of staying in your comfort zone or going beyond it. And then came the pig hunt. This book took way too many pages talking about a pig hunt. It was boring and seemed mostly pointless. Plus, there wasn't enough time left after the pig hunt to wrap things up as nicely as I wanted them to. And the final book I read this month was Mrs. Caliban by Rachel Ingalls. Dorothy is a lonely suburban housewife in a loveless marriage. She hears an announcement over the radio about a monster that has escaped from in a local institution and it's loose in her area. Then of course she comes across this frogman who she names Larry, and she finds him in her own home. And instantly this strange romance begins. Yeah, I guess the bored housewife has an affair with a swamp creature. I gave Mrs. Caliban 4 stars. This isn't the typical kind of book I read, but it was really enjoyable. I was wondering what was real and what wasn't as the book navigated its way through several twists and turns. It's kind of along the lines of The Life of Pi in that way, I guess. And it has a great ending as well, so 4 stars. There you have it, the highs and lows of June 2024, my reading journey. Remember to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what books you finished recently. Maybe also let me know if you've ever read one of these other ones that I talked about. And as always, happy reading.